Operation Sindoor is being hailed as India's biggest, most ambitious response to a terror attack on Indian soil so far. But in this video, I'll talk to you about why not just the military activity, but the diplomatic movements and all of the things that India has done in terms of messaging shows a changing strategy towards Pakistan and towards terror. So, 5 reasons why Operation Sindoor indicates a change in strategy of India specifically. All right, so first, a quick recap if you need one. On the 7th of May, the Indian Armed Forces destroyed 9 targets in Pakistan territory and in Pakistan occupied Kashmir in an operation that lasted 25 minutes. Between about 1:05 a.m. and 1:30 a.m., Operation Sindoor was launched and it was cross-border. Now, for what we understand, there was an all-party meeting that took place today where the Defence Minister Rajnath Singh briefed members of opposition of Operation Sindoor. And in reports that are coming out, we understand the Defence Minister said this is an ongoing operation, which means it's still on. But it was very clear that India doesn't want to escalate the situation at this point. But if Pakistan were to hit back, we will respond. The minister also very interestingly said that as per India's count, 100 terrorists were killed on the 7th of May. Now, after those strikes took place, apart from the information that's trickling out of this all-party meeting, we also have one other formal source of information, which is the press conference that was addressed by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, by Wing Commander Vyomika Singh, and Colonel Sophia Qureshi, who addressed a press conference and told us why India decided on those strikes and why India picked the targets that were hit. But if we look at all of this information together and also all of the news since the 22nd, when that attack in Pahalgam happened, you'll realize there's a changing strategy. So these are 5 reasons why I believe the strategy of India has changed and why this is bigger and more important than anything we've seen in the past. Let's first take a look at just the military exercise. Right? That's reason number 1. India has done cross-border strikes twice in the past, Balkot and Uri. You'll remember Uri surgical strikes back in 2016. Indian commandos, I know you're thinking of the film, but think of the real deal. Indian commandos actually crossed the line of control into Pakistan-occupied Kashmir and destroyed multiple terror launch pads. This was in response to a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist attacking Indian Army Brigade headquarters in Uri. Now, back in 2019, in the Balakot airstrikes, the Indian Air Force struck Jaish's biggest terror training camp in Balakot in Pakistan, and that was cross-border as well. Now, without getting into the granular details, because the press conference is available for you to look at, this time we struck 9 targets. These were also very deep into Pakistan territory. So it was not just Pakistan-occupied Kashmir right across the border, but deep into territory almost near Lahore. And that is why this one seems bigger, seems more strategic, seems more evolved. Now, Operation Sindoor was not just about the targets, but also technically more evolved. It was robust and expansive. From what we understand, Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Maulana Masood Azhar claimed that 10 members of his family and 4 of his aides were killed in those terror strikes as well. Now, the women officers who were providing us details in the press conference said that the weaponry that was used in these strikes were chosen because of precision capability, and the warheads were used specifically to avoid collateral damage. And there's been no reports of collateral damage so far, which means just the building. And now there are visuals that are being released. Just the building that was the target, but none of the buildings around it were hit. They were said that the targets were successfully destroyed without causing any collateral damage. So this was fundamentally, first point, militarily a much bigger exercise inside of Pakistan territory. Number 2, the fact that in that press conference, India very clearly said this was not just about, framed the argument, saying this was not just about Pahalgam, but about terrorism over the last 2.5 decades, since 2001, and all of the terrorism that has been bred and sent across the border by Pakistan, where Pakistan, India argued, has actually built terror infrastructure, which has been honing terrorism for the last 25 years, since our parliament was attacked. So by actually making that argument about the fact that these targets were picked not just in response to Pahalgam, but these targets were picked to dismantle terror. And you'll hear this dismantle terror being used a lot by our political leaders and by responses that India is giving, because it talked very clearly about terror infrastructure and the fact that specifically these 2 groups, the Jaish-e-Mohammed and the Lashkar-e-Taiba, have been working They've been designated by the UN Security Council as terror groups, and they have been working in Pakistan with that infrastructure, attacking parliament, attacking India repeatedly over decades, and this was in response to their last 25 years. So it's a much wider argument here than just, oh, we had this one terror attack, so now we're responding. Also, the fact that India has repeatedly assured the world and repeatedly said that we're looking at terror infrastructure and not Pakistan military during these attacks. And that is messaging to justify the fact that we've gone into Pakistan territory, but we've gone there to dismantle terror activities and not to escalate a military situation. So it is said repeatedly that deliberately avoiding any sort of conventional military targets. This, the fact that India continues to make that distinction is also an attempt clearly to maintain control over the situation and not let it escalate further. Because remember, India has, talked about terrorism for many, many decades. This is not new, whether we're talking at the UN or any of our diplomatic relations on the global scale. India used diplomacy very clearly, very carefully. Now, after we've said, now all of yesterday we were covering reactions also globally to those strikes. New Delhi mounted a diplomatic outreach, from what we understand, and this is a report both in the Indian Express and India Today that says that the NSA Ajit Doval, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar, and the Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri got on the phone with their counterparts almost immediately after the strikes and briefed their counterparts across the world about the fact that this was about dismantling terror, but it was not about military action between India and Pakistan. Now, Delhi is in touch, we understand, with permanent members of the UN Security Council, or the P5 as they're called, and also with those who have influence over Pakistan. So Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Washington as well. We heard Donald Trump give another statement where he said he hopes it ends quickly and he's here to do anything to help. He has said specifically, let me quote, "If I can do anything to help, I will be there." We understand, of course, that our External Affairs Minister has told his counterparts that India has no intent to escalate the tensions and is prepared to retaliate resolutely if Pakistan does so. This is a clear message to not just Islamabad, but also to China, who has come out to say that China is Pakistan's all-weather friend, making it very clear that India is not going to back down. And we're very clear about our stand right now. Now, within an hour of the strikes, we understand from a report in India Today, that India's diplomatic machinery was working full swing to reach out to all global partners and, playing it very clearly to make sure that Pakistan does not hijack the narrative and play victim in any way, but be very clear about the fact that we are dismantling terror, but we are not creating any collateral damage, not attacking any of the military establishment of Pakistan. So let me give you some of the responses from the rest of the world. Israel has actually responded, saying that it calls the strike a proud act of self-defense. The Russian Foreign Ministry has emphasized the need of global cooperation to combat the evil of terrorism. Japan has also said that its stance against terrorism is very strong. Germany has said that it is in contact with India and Pakistan and is monitoring. UK has urged a direct dialogue between the two countries, but you will see, by taking a stance against terror, and India has actually worked to bring a lot of the global partners closer. Now, onto India's side, but it's not just about the strike. Remember, India's response was much larger. There was the Indus Water Treaty that was suspended, the closure of the land borders with Pakistan, downgrading diplomatic ties, declaring Pakistan military diplomats as persona non grata, revoking existing visas of all Pakistani nationals, closure of airspace for Pakistani airlines, trades that were snapped, shipping ties were snapped, postal ties were snapped, a crackdown on Pakistan social media and media content, briefing of the UN Security Council members about Pakistan's role in this particular terror attack that we saw, and of course, India demanding that the Asian Development Bank cut funding for Pakistan. So it's actually been a larger sort of 360 response to Pakistan and to terror that India has engaged with, and not just the military response that we've seen so far. And finally, the messaging that has come from the press conference. I mean, everybody talked about the fact that they were two women officers that were chosen to address the nation and to address the press and the world effectively when it came to, this particular strike. One of the reasons that's being interpreted was the fact that the Indian woman was the survivor victim of the Pahalgam attack, because the men were gunned down in front of women, and this was a way to sort of reinstate the Indian woman's control over the situation and say that we're not just victims, but we're also part of the response that we're going to give you. But also, I want to take a minute to remind you that Foreign Secretary Misri had said that the objective of the Pahalgam attack, when Hindus were singled out as victims and then gunned down, was an attempt to provoke communal discord, to basically break us down because we can live together peacefully. And an attempt was to separate us. And he said it's a credit of the government and the people of India that these designs were foiled. So we didn't fall for it. We haven't come apart. And it was perhaps that was the reason why the voices and the faces and the people who were picked, the three people who addressed that press conference, were picked because of their gender, because of their religion, because of their backgrounds, in order to show a unified force